Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has been insisting that his country will also play a role in the offensive in Mosul, but not according to the Iraqi Prime Minister. Baghdad has told Erdogan to get his troops out of Iraq, and there's been quite a spat between the two leaders. For more on that, we can go now to New York. Marco Vicenzino is the director at the Global Strategy Project. Thanks for being with us on France 24 tonight. First of all, from the perspective of Baghdad, why is Turkey being left out of this offensive at the last minute?
Well, basically, it's kind of strange. From a Turkish perspective, it's strange because from Turkey, they've been stationing their troops there in the camp in Bashika, north of Mosul, for over the past year. Now the Iraqi government is now going very much public in its opposition. It's been a war of words in recent weeks, where it got to the point where the Iraqi prime minister even said there's a threat of a regional war, and also the Turkish parliament has renewed the presence of its troops for another year, what it calls against terrorist elements, which could be either ISIS forces or also Kurdish militants, primarily PKK. So in this sense, I think the Turkish government has already sent a delegation to Baghdad to try to defuse the situation. But it shows you the operation in Mosul, obviously being a very diverse city, plays a key role, not only just in the decisive battle for the presence of ISIS in the region itself, in Iraq or in Syria, but also for the future. Will play a key role in shaping the future of ethnic relations in Iraq and potentially beyond the region. So Mosul, there's a lot going on in Mosul. It's not just about the battle of the city and removing ISIS. There's much more. It plays into the wider geopolitical context of the region, in Iraq, once again, in Iraq and beyond also.
Right, because when you look at the comments made by President Erdogan today, he's saying that he's concerned that about what will happen after the offensive in Mosul, that there will be sectarian clashes, that there could possibly be revenge attacks on the Sunni Arab population in Mosul. And there is a concern on Ankara's part that there will be some serious demographic changes in the region. We know, of course, about the conflict between the Turks and the Kurds.
Yeah, I mean, two issues. One is geographic. Obviously, if you look at Turkey shares a 350-kilometer border with Iraq, and it wants to prevent any further spillover into Iraqi territory, into Turkish territory. And secondly, once again, it's that issue, what you mentioned, the ethnic sectarian element. It is a diverse city. If you look at what happened in many other cities that were retaken by largely, if you look at Shiite militias in western Iraq, whether you can look at cities, for example, Ramadi, whereby there were reprisals on local Sunni population. The Turks and others, not just the Turks alone, but others want to prevent that from happening in Mosul, which is the second largest city in Iraq, over 2 million people, and it's the last urban bastion of ISIS in Iraq itself. So there's a lot at stake, not just for Turkey. There are several players, and Turkey has made it clear that it wants a seat at the table amongst these various players in this very complex dynamic, which is Iraq and then also in Syria itself.
Now, the Kurds are playing a big role in this conflict. The Peshmerga fighters numbering around 30,000 in the direct offensive in Mosul. Might we imagine there's been some kind of agreement between the Shiite Iraqi government and the Kurds to shut the Turks out?
No, not at all. I mean, in this sense, I think the Kurds have been fairly supportive of the Turkish role. It's just that publicly, they're saying publicly that Baghdad and Ankara need to resolve these differences. But Turkey has also played a role in training many Peshmerga forces and local Sunni militiamen in that camp in Bashika and in northern Iraq itself. So Turkey has played a role, not to the opposition of the Kurdish regional government, but obviously the Kurdish regional government diplomatically wants to play more of a neutral role by making these statements that Ankara and Baghdad need to work out their differences.
So what can Turkey do now? Because it seems that the statement from Baghdad is pretty definitive.
Well, the Turkish troops are going to stay. I mean, obviously, it's one thing is what rhetoric and the other thing is actions. President Erdogan has made it quite clear. He says anything that'll impact us, not only will we have a seat at the table, we're going to have a presence. And he made that quite clear in August of 2016 when he launched the offensive. Turkish Air Force and Turkish tanks supporting Sunni militiamen in northern Syria, the areas bordering Iraq, in launching an offensive and making an incursion into Syrian territory. And it's made it clear. It's already, once again, its troops have been north of Mosul for the past year. It'll do what it has to do, what it deems to be necessary on Iraq, in northern Iraq, on Iraqi territory, and also if their presence is required, eventually if there's going to be an offensive in Raqqa and eastern Syria, the Turks have made it clear. Turkey, for a long time, from the beginning of the conflict until not too long ago, was playing a very reactive role. Now it's playing more of a proactive role. Much of it has to do with internal domestic politics in Turkey. Obviously, you had the coup attempt against Erdogan in the middle of July of 2016. That did much also to push for a more proactive role. He purged the Turkish military, but also wants to send it on the offensive. It's a notice to not just his opponents domestically in Turkey, but it's also a statement to all of what he perceives as enemies or his opponents in the region that Turkey will stand its ground to protect and to secure its interests.
All right, Marco Vicenzino from the Global Strategy Project. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.